I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, President Officer. The inferno that ripped through my home city of Glasgow was devastating. Only the bravery and professionalism of 250 firefighters stopped the flames from engulfing Central Station. There are many serious questions about the dodgy vape shop where the fire started, but the immediate focus must be on local businesses who already face severe pressures. On Tuesday, John Swinney said that the SNP government was in discussion with the SNP-run City Council. So can he tell these struggling business owners exactly what support will be provided and when?
First Minister.
First of all, let me associate myself very closely with the remarks that Russell Finlay has made about the bravery and the effectiveness of the firefighting operation, which has enabled us to be in a situation where Glasgow Central Station and the Central Hotel and most of the infrastructure around the site of the fire has been protected, although there is significant disruption to individuals as a consequence. The Government is in active discussion with Glasgow City Council, who are gathering information from the affected businesses about their circumstances. I'm not in a position today to say definitively what financial support will be available, but I expect to be able to do so very shortly. And Glasgow City Council and the Government will discuss exactly what support can be made available to the affected businesses. And I include in that the businesses that have been directly displaced by the fire and those who have been affected by the access to the central Glasgow area, which is of course severely restricted because of the safety considerations at the site.
So Finlay.
Thank you. I'm not sure if that answer will inspire huge confidence. There does seem to be a lack of urgency to this matter, because many businesses impacted by the Glasgow fire already face massive imminent rises to their rates bills. Across Scotland, these bills will force some to cease trading and lay off workers. Two prominent businessmen have issued particularly stark warnings. Lord Haughey said there could be, and I quote, civil disobedience and a mass campaign of non-payment. Sir Tom Hunter said, and I quote, "Mr Swinney, First Minister, you understand what's going on here, and you understand the punishment. I'm going to say it today, can't pay, won't pay." My party is campaigning to pause the new rates bills before they come into effect on the 1st of April. So will John Swinney heed these warnings before it's too late?
First Minister.
I recognise the challenges that are faced by the business community in Glasgow in general and across the country, and I recognise the significance of the issues in relation to non-domestic rates, which of course has been central to the Government's budget provisions for many years, where we've protected the business community from some of the increases that they have faced. Now, some properties will see some significant increases in rateable values at the 2026 revaluation, but the transitional relief that the Government has put in place means that the gross bills of an estimated 60,000 properties will be lower in 2026-27 than they would otherwise have been. That is, of course, part of the wider non-domestic rate support that the Government puts in place, which totals in excess of over £870 million in 2026-27.
Russell Finlay.
John Swinney mentions the budget response, but that is a sticking plaster. Businesses are bleeding out, and Scottish hospitality is being hit hard, with pubs already closing at a rate of one per week. But John Swinney doesn't want to know. Last month, I invited him to discuss Scotland's pub crisis over a pint. He refused. The Scottish Hospitality Group invited Mr Swinney to its recent hustings. He refused. Instead, he sent a local councillor. The same group also wrote to Mr Swinney on the 30th of January asking for a meeting. He hasn't even replied. Does John Swinney think that his high-handed treatment of this critical sector of the Scottish economy is appropriate?
First Minister.
Well, President Officer, this extensive engagement goes on between my ministers and the different sectors that are involved in the business rates discussions. So there are a whole range of different meetings have taken place between ministers and representatives of the hospitality industry as part of this work. And of course that led to the budget propositions being put forward that put in place very significant transitional reliefs that will reduce the net bill for eligible properties to 25% of what it would have been in 2026-27. So that is a significant contribution. And as I said in one of my earlier answers, it brings in, as part of a package of reliefs estimated to be worth over £870 million in the next financial year to companies in Scotland. So I understand the concerns within the business community. I engage regularly with a range of different business organisations. My ministers do exactly the same to make sure that we can take the action within our financial resources available to us to support the business community and to encourage their growth and their development within Scotland. And that's at the heart of the government's budget proposals.
Russell Finlay.
He couldn't even be bothered going to Hustings. He didn't even bother sending a minister or an MSP to the hustings. So let me tell you about another shocking example of John Swinney's disgraceful, high-handed approach to business. I contacted him directly about Katie Long. Katie took on a derelict pub in Mr Swinney's constituency and worked tirelessly to transform it into a thriving community local. But Katie's rates bill is about to double, and she's on the brink of calling last orders for the last time. A community would lose its local, 26 people would lose their jobs, and over a fortnight ago, I asked John Swinney to visit Katie's pub. He hasn't even replied. So Mr Swinney won't go to Katie, so she's come here today. And I'll be going with Katie to a nearby pub at 1:30 this afternoon. So will John Swinney join us to discuss Katie's plight and Scotland's pub crisis over a pint?
1:30, John. 1:30, John.
First Minister.
Well, I'm very familiar with the case that Mr Finlay puts to me, and of course there will be benefits in that case of the government's transitional relief system that will be put in place. Now, I can't, I'm afraid, because of my commitments today, join Mr Finlay at 1:30. I would ask Parliament to understand that there are a range of different issues I'm wrestling with today that I have to take forward. But what I would say to Mr Finlay is this government has demonstrated consistently over its every year it's been in office a determination to put in place support for business. We were the first government to introduce the small business bonus scheme, which the pub that Mr Finlay referred to has benefited from. We are a government that puts in place a series of different reliefs, whether it's in hospitality or retail or leisure premises, or whether it's through the reduction in the rates that are placed in terms of rateable levels within Scotland. And that's all part of £870 million of financial support for this government. And I would just point out to Mr Finlay, he voted for not one single penny of it when it came before Parliament, and this is just posturing from Russell Finlay.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, on Sunday night, I, like so many other Glaswegians, watched in horror as yet another fire ripped through the heart of our city. I want to place on record my thanks to the emergency services who ran towards danger to protect others. And thanks to them, no one was seriously injured or lost their life. On Monday morning, when I spoke to workers there, I saw the best of Glasgow. Businesses handing out coffee to workers dealing with the fallout, volunteers helping to manage commuters. People really do make Glasgow. Now, there are a number of issues raised by this fire: the regulation and licensing of vape shops, the support packages for those that have lost their livelihoods, how soon we can get normality for workers and commuters, and of course the resourcing of our fire and rescue service. So what urgent lessons will the government learn from this incident?
First Minister.
President, so let me associate myself also with the remarks of Mr Sarwar. I visited the site on Monday, I was briefed by the various organisations that were involved, led by the firefighting commanders of the incident, and understood at first hand from them the severity of the incident that they were dealing with, but also the enormous debt of gratitude we should have to them for two reasons. Firstly, that as a result of their prompt intervention and comprehensive intervention, there were no injuries, which I consider to be a minor miracle on an incident of that scale. But secondly, because of the strategic direction of the operation, Glasgow Central Station and the Central Hotel were saved from fire spread from an intense fire. And that was because of strategic judgments made by the Fire and Rescue Service. So I associate myself very much with those remarks. And then, of course, the whole recovery operation involving our transport networks, the emergency services, the volunteers who turned out, as they did very quickly, to provide that support to individuals. Now, Mr Sarwar is correct. There are a number of lessons that have to be learnt from this incident. There will be an investigation into the site, but it looks pretty obvious that it started in a vape shop in Union Street. There is regulation in place. There is more regulation being actively pursued by the United Kingdom Government, which will affect Scotland and which we are party to that regulation. And we will also be looking to identify what further steps are required to ensure that there is proper and effective regulation of these premises that are taken forward. And then lastly, and to follow up the point that I made to Mr Finlay, the Government will be putting in place financial support channelled through Glasgow City Council to support affected businesses. But we just need to take some time to establish exactly what type of support is going to make the difference. But it will be financial support because that is required by affected businesses.
Anna Sarwar.
I welcome those comments from John Swinney. Fires like the one we saw on Sunday are difficult to fight, and we saw the dedication of our firefighters. But the truth is they are too often fighting fires with reduced capacity. In 2023, John Swinney and the SNP cut the number of specially designed engines called high-reach appliances, or HRAs, from 26 to just 16 for the whole of Scotland. In Glasgow, we saw 6 appliances cut to 2. And now it is believed that both of Glasgow's HRAs weren't available on Sunday due to annual inspection. Why was that ever allowed to happen? And it is believed that one had to be called from Edinburgh. Since 2013, 1 in 6 firefighter jobs have been lost. That's more than 1,200. Sunday is a reminder of what these men and women put at stake every time they go to work. Now, we don't know right now what difference the reduction in fire service capacity would have made on Sunday, but will John Swinney commit to an immediate investigation into any potential impact this may have had on the response so that lessons can be urgently learnt?
First Minister. I understand the significance and importance of the points that Mr Sarwar puts to me, but I do come back to the point of agreement that he and I have exchanged, which is that the fire and rescue response on Sunday was exemplary and that the resources that were required were there to ensure that the fire could be extinguished, and crucially that the equipment, the high-rise equipment that was available, provided the strategic intervention that stopped the fire from spreading into Glasgow Central Station or the Central Hotel. So all of that equipment and resource was there to enable that incident to be tackled. Now, when it comes to considering the deployment of resources or the allocation of resources within Scotland for the Fire and Rescue Service, the Government obviously is very mindful of our obligations in that respect, which is why in the recent budget the Government provided an additional £23.8 million to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, bringing its budget to £435.96 million. So that's an increase in the budget for the Fire and Rescue Service. And then secondly, the Fire and Rescue Service is going through a service delivery review, but central to that review, and I've made this point to individual members who have raised issues about fire capacity around the country, the questions of fire safety and resilience and proper deployment of resources will underpin any consideration of the issues in that review. And that's the point that I would stress to Parliament today. That is the essential requirement of any review, to make sure we have a fire and rescue service that can meet the needs of Scotland as we face them today, and that's the commitment I give to Parliament today.
Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney and I agree on the exemplary nature of decision-making for those individual firefighters. But where I think he needs to commit to an urgent investigation is the impact on the capacity that was available to those firefighters. I don't think he can logically say that reducing Glasgow's appliances from 6 to 2, and those 2 appliances both being out off stream at the same time due to inspection, couldn't have had a material difference. Now, we don't know, but he can't say categorically that they would not have had a material difference to the response of the fire, and that's why an urgent investigation must happen to establish the facts. It was right that John Swinney went to Union Street on Monday to see those who fought to put out this blaze. But government must be about more than gestures, because while John Swinney was on Union Street thanking the front line, at the very same time, Scottish Government officials were meeting FBU officials to inform them of plans for more job cuts to Scotland's fire service. How can that possibly be right? We know there are now fewer firefighters, less firefighting equipment, longer response times and station closures. Our fire and rescue service has already faced years of cuts. So surely the tragedy on Sunday must be a wake-up call and a reason to pause.
First Minister.
I would have hoped that my answer to Mr Sarwar's second question would have given him the reassurance on many of those questions, because the service delivery review that's going on within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, which is the type of exercise that has to be undertaken on a regular basis, must have public safety and the effective dealing with fire and rescue incidents uppermost in its consideration. Now, if I could explain to Parliament, since 2009-10, there's been a 33% reduction in since 2013, there's been a reduction in dwelling fires by over 20% in Scotland. But at the same time, there has been an increase in demand for fire and rescue services to deal with issues such as flooding or wildfires. Now, I say that to say that the demand and the incidents that have to be addressed are a matter that have to be constantly reviewed by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and they need to identify what are the proper resources that are available to undertake those incidents. And that's what will be considered as part of this exercise. Now, in relation to the incident on Sunday in Glasgow, I am confident that there were effective resources in place to do all that needed to be done, because in looking at the incident and looking at its severity, the impact could have been ever more greater than it actually was. It was bad enough, but it could have been ever more greater. And what that demonstrates to me is that the resources are in place to tackle such incidents, but that is an issue that must be kept under constant review, and that's what we expect the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Board to do.